We're told often that the only thing that is certain is death and taxes. I would submit that the only things that are certain is death, taxes, and change. The question is, how are we going to react to that change? We are always either changing or dying. There is no in between. If you think about it, even age, we're changing. Our bodies are changing. Our thoughts are changing. Everything around us is changing. It is up to us to decide how we want to respond or react to that change. Many of us spend so much time in fight or flight. So when change comes or when something happens, we're constantly what we call high beta. High beta brainwave is when your brain is just on. It is just on and it is in survival mode most of the time if it's very high beta. That's how we spend our time. Many of us spend our time that way because we have not learned to adapt to the changing environment that's around us. When we're looking at change, we can choose to accept it. We can choose to go respond to it and do what we can to change it. Whichever decision we make, it is a decision we are making. We are changing. We are growing. The question is, you have to ask yourself, am I reacting or am I responding? And what is the best course of action for me? Neurolinguistic programming talks a lot about reframing as well as cognitive behavior therapy. If someone is speeding past you on the highway and they cut you off, at that point, you can decide, are you going to reframe that and say, I'm not in as big a hurry as you are. Maybe you're rushing to a hospital to a sick child. Maybe you're literally rushing to a fire. I've had that happen to me. When you're able to reframe something and see it in a different way that we've been speaking about, you can take that fight or flight response and you can lower it so that all those destructive hormones, let me take this one. They're not destructive. They're there to help us, to preserve us. But you can definitely get them lowered and you can definitely have more serotonin, more of the happy hormones. But the only way to get that is to reframe, readjust, change your mind and understand that change is part of life. Not only is it a part of life, it is a sign of life. Coping with criticism. This is an interesting topic to me because as a child, being the youngest of 6 children, I took a lot of criticism, and I think I spoke yesterday in this room or in a room where I was talking about being bullied. And for a very, very long time, whenever someone would criticize me, it would just rip my heart out, and it created some self-esteem issues. And by the way, just because someone's a high achiever, it doesn't mean that they don't have shadows of feeling not good enough. In fact, many high achievers are just that. A lot of times we don't feel like we're good enough. And it's usually because we've been criticized or bullied or whatever we make up in our own head about not being good enough. And what I learned about criticism is some people are just mean. They just are. And it is data. And we have to take a step back when someone is criticizing us, or at least this is what I've learned to do, is really just take a step back. First of all, is there any truth in it? Is this an opportunity for me to grow and to learn to maybe change my language, whatever that may be? So first thing is it something I need to examine? The next thing I need to do is determine whether or not, are they just trying to help? Or are they just being mean? Sometimes how we respond to that, what we perceive as criticism, because sometimes it's not even criticism, it's just a statement or observation. And so the question becomes, how will I react to that? Do I let it roll off my shoulders? Do I stand in my power? At the end of the day, if you're constantly being criticized, the best thing to do is just don't defend. Just let it go, because some people are always going to criticize you. You're not going to be good enough for some people, no matter what you do. And we have to reach a point, and we just have to stand in our own power and know that what they are saying is not who you are. That's not who you have to be. And sometimes just being quiet, just like, okay, if that's your opinion, that's fine, but that doesn't define me because you don't define me.
There are so many people in the world, and you may be watching this right now, and you have these incredible ideas, and what you think is missing is motivation. And that's not true. Because the way that our minds are wired, and the fact about human beings is that we are not designed to do things that are uncomfortable or scary or difficult. Our brains are designed to protect us from those things because our brains are trying to keep us alive. And in order to change, in order to build a business, in order to be the best parent, the best spouse, to do all those things that you know you want to do with your life, with your work, with your dreams, you're going to have to do things that are difficult, uncertain, or scary, which sets up this problem for all of us. You're never going to feel like it.
Why do you think that is?
Oh, I know exactly why that is. Because I've studied this so much, because for me, one of the hardest things to figure out was, why is it so hard to do the little things that would improve my life? And what I've come to realize is that the way that our minds are designed is our minds are designed to stop you at all costs from doing anything that might hurt you. The way that this all happens is it all starts with something super subtle that none of us ever catch. And that is with this habit that all of us have that nobody's talking about. We all have a habit of hesitating. We have an idea, you're sitting in a meeting, you have this incredible idea, and instead of just, saying it, you stop and you hesitate. Now, what none of us realize is that when you hesitate, just that moment, that micro moment, that small hesitation, it sends a stress signal to your brain. It wakes your brain up, and your brain all of a sudden goes, oh, wait a minute, why is he hesitating? He didn't hesitate when he put on his killer spiky sneakers. He didn't hesitate with the really cool track pants. He didn't hesitate with the NASA t-shirt. Now he's hesitating to talk, something must be up. Then your brain goes to work to protect you. It has a million different ways to protect you. One of them is called the spotlight effect. It's a known phenomenon where your brain magnifies risk. Why? To pull you away from something that it perceives to be a problem. And so you can truly trace every single problem or complaint in your life to silence and hesitation. Those are decisions. What I do and what's changed my life is waking up and realizing that I'm never going to feel like doing the things that are tough or difficult or uncertain or scary or new. So I need to stop waiting until I feel like it. And number two, I am one decision away from a totally different marriage, a totally different life, a totally different job, a totally different income, a totally different relationship with my kids. Not like one decision, I'm divorcing you in the marriage example, but one decision on, you could be having a conversation with your spouse and you feel your emotions rise up, and within a tiny window, those emotions can take over and can impact how your marriage goes. Or you can learn how to take control of that micro moment and make a decision to act in a way that actually shifts your marriage. Your life comes down to your decisions, and if you change your decisions, you will change everything. In the scheme of life, hitting the snooze button is not that big of a deal. But here's the thing about life. None of us wake up and say, today is the day I destroy my life. What we do is we kind of check out because it feels overwhelming. Or we check out because we're afraid. Or we check out because we start listening to self-doubt. And then we make these teeny tiny decisions all day long. We don't even realize it. Decision to not get up on time, a decision to not eat the right thing, a decision to snap at your kids, a decision to not speak in a meeting, a decision to not look for a job, a decision to not deal with your finances, a decision to not call your parents, like whatever it is. All day long, these tiny decisions that take you so far off track. And then you wake up like I did and you look at your life and you think, how the hell did I get here? And more importantly, how do I get back over there? And you have no idea. And so I was so trapped. And I know from your story, you felt the same way. Like you knew that there was more in store for you. but you couldn't figure out how do you close that gap? How do you find the power that's in you? How do you discover your greatness? How do you solve these problems? It feels so overwhelming when you can't. I mean, I would go to the grocery store and the items would scan and I would be sitting there readying my excuse because there was no way that my check card was going to clear. I got in this struggle with myself that a lot of us find ourselves in, and that is you get trapped in what I call the knowledge action gap. You know what to do, but you can't seem to make yourself do it, right? I mean, every one of us is one Google search away from a list of instructions that if you follow any of them, it will change your life. But how do you get out of your head and stop thinking about what you need to do and actually do it? And in my case, this stuff was pretty easy. Get up on time, make breakfast for the kids, get them on the bus, start looking for a job. Don't drink so much. Instead of isolating yourself, pick up the phone and call a friend. Get yourself out into the woods and go for a walk. Start running again. Like all these little things that I was capable of, but I couldn't get out of here. Could not get out of here. And if you're stuck, that's the problem. The problem is you're in your head, you're thinking. When you set goals, when you have an intention on something that you want to change about your life, your brain helps you. What it does is it opens up a checklist, and then your brain goes to work trying to remind you of that intention that you set. And it's really important to develop the skill, and I say that word purposefully, the skill of knowing how to hear that inner wisdom and that intention kicking in and leaning into it quickly. So for me, my brain saying, that's it, right there, move as fast as a rocket, Mel. I wanted to change my life. And I think most people that are miserable or that are really like dying to be great and dying to have more, we want to change. We want to live a better life. We want to create more for our families. We want to be happier. The desire is there. Again, it's about how do you go from knowledge to action. So the first thing in this story that's important is realizing that the answer was in me. And my mind was telling me, pay attention. Anyway, the next morning, the alarm goes off, and I pretended NASA was there. It's the stupidest story. I literally went 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I counted out loud, and then I stood up. And I'll never forget standing there in my bedroom. It was dark, it was cold, it was winter in Boston. And for the first time in 3 months, I had beaten my habit of hitting the snooze button. I couldn't believe it, and I thought, wait a minute. Counting backwards? That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Well, the next morning I used it again and it worked. The next morning I used it again and it worked. The next morning I used it again and it worked. And then I started to notice something really interesting. There were moments all day long, just like that 5-second moment in bed, where I knew, knowledge, what I should do. And if I didn't move within 5 seconds, my brain would step in and talk me out of it. Every human being has a 5-second window, might even be shorter for you. You have about a 5-second window in which you can move from idea to action before your brain kicks into full gear and sabotages any change in behavior. Because remember, your brain is wired to stop you from doing things that are uncomfortable or uncertain or scary. It's your job to learn how to move from those ideas that could change everything into acting on them.